1-pound package of sausage. I like using a local brand. Can't get a local brand that you like. The Bob Evans brand that you can get in almost any grocery store is usually pretty good. Skillet's already been turned on for a couple of minutes preheating. Get that sausage in there and get it browned up. Got my fire on medium. I don't have any bacon today, so I'll be using some butter to augment. This sausage really doesn't put out very much fat. I'm just doing a single batch, a 1-pound sausage single batch, so I'm going to put in, got a half a stick of butter here I'm going to put in. This recipe is usually the best with a little bit of bacon fat. So if you're cooking some bacon, cook it first, leave the fat in the pan, then throw your sausage in and start this process. That works very well. The bigger the batch of gravy you want to make, means you got to have more flour. In order to have more flour, you have to have more grease in your pan, like what you're seeing here, to take the flour. So this is when you need to start planning ahead on the size of your batch. First thing I did was got the oven fired up, preheating. Then I put my pan on the stove and got the pan preheating. Biscuits are already laid out on the baking stone. I'm going to put those in the oven here in just a second. I'll put the biscuits in the oven right now. There goes my biscuits heading in the oven. Depending on how you like your gravy too. Some people like their sausage to be in bigger chunks in the gravy so they can kind of taste the sausage more coming through. So you saw how you break it down right now. If you like bigger chunks, you can leave it in bigger chunks. But usually break it down fairly small. Some people break it down into teeny tiny crumbles that you can hardly tell it's even in there. I don't really like doing that. It's hard to put a recipe like this on paper because it's not really about measured portions. It's about what looks right. Because when you start adding your flour, you just put in the flour until all this liquid is absorbed into the flour. So you start with a couple of scoops, stir it around a little bit, see what it looks like. If it didn't look like all this liquid's been taken up by the flour, well then you just got to add a little bit more. And that does set the amount of gravy you're going to end up with in the end. So even with only a single pound, if you needed to make a bigger batch of gravy, throw in more butter, throw in more flour. But the catch is, once you've added the milk, you can't put any more flour in there. The flour has to be cooked. So you got to kind of set that now. We're getting real close to adding some flour here. Some folks like to take their sausage till it's real brown and crispy. I normally don't do that because this is going to continue to cook the whole time it's in the gravy until you shut the heat off. So it'll be completely cooked. It's pretty much completely cooked now. There's just a little bit of pink left in there. But by the time you're done making the gravy, it will have been cooking the whole time at this temperature. And that milk comes up to just about a boil. I also don't mess with my temperature. I set it on medium and leave it that way through the whole process. A lot of folks talk about raising the temperature in the beginning and backing it off in the end, and when you add milk you increase it and then lower it back. I've just never done that. I left it on medium. That's all I ever do. I think that comes down to because I always use cast iron. So once you get cast iron at temperature, it cooks pretty evenly. That's the huge advantage of cast iron. It spreads out the heat. Alright. Here comes some flour. That was like 4 heaping scoops. Just mixed in. That's probably plenty of flour for the amount of grease I had in this pan. That was only half a stick of butter. Now at this point, you still could add more butter and then more flour. You can do that up until we put the milk in there. You get this on a cast iron, you start getting this stuff in the bottom of your pan down here. That's okay. When you add your milk and you do the whisking, all that flavor that goes into the cast iron comes into your gravy. You don't want it to burn, but don't be concerned about that stuff sticking in the bottom. That's good stuff. I didn't have much grease going on this pan to begin with, so I think my flouring was just about perfect. That's that gel consistency I told you about. Just want to make sure you got all the flour down in there. And the flour does have to cook. It takes about a minute or two. You can usually smell it. I don't know, when the flour gets cooked, it just kind of releases this different smell. If you're paying attention, you can smell it. Once you've done this a few times, you'll get to learn it. Once you smell that, you know your flour's cooked, and you're ready to add milk. If you don't allow your flour to be cooked, you get that real powdery, starchy taste in your gravy. It won't be the smooth, creamy gravy that you want. So you got two things going on here. Number one, it's important that you cook your flour. Number two, it's important you don't burn your flour. So once it gets there, you gotta get that milk in here. Or if you think you need to, get more butter in here right away so you can get more flour in here right away. You can't mess around. That looks like it's screaming for some flour. Or I'm sorry, the flour is screaming for some milk. To me, it's ready. Using whole milk. 2% milk never seems to work too well to me. Some people even like to use the heavy whipping cream as opposed to the milk. I've just always liked whole milk. I've done it with 2% milk, but I don't really like it. It just seems too thin. So I pretty much just covered everything I had with a layer of milk that wasn't really measured. I just covered, because you're going to add milk probably twice more. And had you put more flour in here, you need more milk in here. But either way, you start with less milk and work your way up. You can always add more milk, but once you put it in here, you can't take it out. This is where that stuff that was in the bottom of the cast iron pan a moment ago, as we're whisking here, we're releasing all that flavor into our gravy. Hard to see the bottom of the pan at the moment, but that stuff's all gone now. It's already mixed up in here. It's important once you put the milk in here, until you shut the heat off, you pretty much got to keep this thing going. You can't walk away from it. It will burn pretty quickly on you. Secret ingredient on making any good sausage gravy is a dose of love, because you gotta put the time in to make it. You can see it's starting to get thick there right now. Getting the gravy formed up, and I can already tell it's way too thick, but that's okay because that was only our first milk. We're going to do at least one more milk, probably two. Break it down. But theoretically, if you were in a hurry and you like that consistency, you could add in your spices and your flavorings right now and call this done. Here comes some more milk. I'm just going to break it all down again. Now my second milk is when I start adding my spices in here. Don't use a ton of spices. Okay, now it's all broke down to a liquid. So this is when I want to put my spices in. Going for black pepper here. If you like less, put less. That's the first peppering. I normally now will pepper each time I add milk. But a lot of folks tell me I use too much pepper. The original recipe I was taught was called Peppermill gravy, so it had a lot of pepper in it. Now I've got to get my Worcestershire sauce in here. However the hell you pronounce that, W sauce. This bottle's just about gone. Got the second one ready to go. And how much of this stuff you use, I always kind of go by the color. It seems like when you get the color right, you get the flavor right. You really want this to be almost a brown. So as you put more milk in here, you got to kind of keep working that color. That color right there is what you want throughout. So keep stirring, keep mixing, add as you need. Going to add a little bit of Old Bay here. Not a lot. I want to make it hot. The biscuits are getting close to being done, so not sure how many more milks I'm going to add here, but definitely gonna need more W sauce. That timer you hear beepings tell me check on my biscuits. Yep, they're done. I gotta get them out of the oven. This one's tough because you gotta keep this stuff going. So I'm gonna drop my heat back as low as possible just to give me time to get the stuff out the oven here. Oh damn it, I didn't get hot mess ready. Now I'm paying for that. Alright, found a couple of towels. Fresh, hot, perfect biscuits. Back to stirring. Heat's back to medium number 4 on my stove. Looking pretty good. That will thicken up on us here as it cooks. They say it's important to have your milk come to a boil for it to thicken up properly. And that's why some folks, I guess, chase the heat and start turning the heat up. But you can see this is boiling pretty good. And I ain't messing with the heat. Leaving it right at medium. I did turn it down there for a second because I didn't want it to burn while I was taking the biscuits out. Trying to work the sides down so nothing gets left unmixed. At this point, I want to give it a taste test. Got my spoon that was sitting here from when I put the flour in. So we're going to give it a taste test. Not bad. I'm getting used to less pepper because a lot of folks don't like that much pepper. The other thing is it always seems to, after you're cooked and turn the fire off, and as it cools, it always seems to want to thicken right up again. So keep that in mind, that you probably always want to have it a little bit looser than it should be in the pan, because it's probably still going to thicken up once it starts to cool a little bit. This is a single batch, but as you can see, it still makes quite a bit of gravy here for a single batch. It's great for 1 can of biscuits. You need 2 cans of biscuits. That's usually when I'll go to 2 pounds of sausage and double things up. I don't like to add salt to it. I use salted butter, and the W sauce has salt in it, a lot of sodium in it, so I don't like to add additional salt. They tell you if you're using all-purpose flour that you have to use salt to off-taste the taste of the flour. Well, I've got salt in the other ingredients I'm using, and I prefer to keep the salt down. But I guess if you had the taste for it, you could add it. You can see in there the starting to thicken back up good for us. We've got a pretty good consistency going on. Yep, I don't think I need to add any more milk. When I tasted it, I got the kind of little bit of after bite of heat, so I got enough pepper going on there. I'm not gonna add any more pepper. And I did put just a little bit of that Old Bay in there, so that kicked it up just a little bit. And if you notice the color there, it's not the color of milk, it's just a little darker, like a tan. That's that W sauce in there. So that kind of lets you know you got that in there. Everybody has their quote-unquote secret ingredient, and that is mine, the W sauce. This gravy is almost done here. I'm about ready to kill the heat. Heat's off now. cast iron, still a temperature though. It holds the heat. So you gotta remember, it's still gonna keep cooking a moment or two after you cut that heat. Keep this gravy moving so that heat's down enough where it's gonna keep it nice and hot, but you don't want it at the point where it could burn your gravy. Yeah, some good looking gravy going on there. Grab me a plate and put a couple of biscuits on here. I like taking me a couple of biscuits and just take them in half and open them up. Yeah, look at that gravy consistency now. It's pretty good. Sometimes I make it a little thicker than that, but that's pretty good. You can move it aside to see that pan down there before it flows in there. You're pretty good. Looking at this ain't making you hungry, well, I don't know what to tell you. So y'all been asking me for the recipe. There you go. There's Grandpa's sausage sawmill gravy right there.